Welcome, everybody, to the monthly VPM webinar. So we appreciate you being here. And we got a good buddy of mine, Dylan Scroggins, speaking today. So Dylan, why don't you just start talking a little bit about you and your deal as we let people get in. So we won't get into the presentation just yet, but just talk a little bit about about you and how you started Kalmar Group.
Yeah, great question. And Pete, feel free to interrupt me when we're really starting to kick off. And also just thanks for having me. It's been really fun to recruit in the PM space these last couple of years. So, a little background on me: been recruiting for 15 years or so, off and on. Did everything from college admissions to working for a small agency. Did a lot of work in software sales, actually not in recruiting, but building out sales team. But that software was B2B in the SMB space, and we had plenty of property management companies there too. So, started Kalmar Group 2 years ago, really focusing on like director, VP level for any privately held company. My thesis fit perfectly with just PM companies in general in regards to like owner led, founded, et cetera. And a lot of what I'm sharing today is going to be a lot of director, VP type if you need that, but also hopefully a lot of nuggets that you can use for leasing agents, property managers, BDMs, et cetera.
Awesome. Well, we got a quorum here. Thank you, everybody, for taking your time. We know that time is the most valuable asset, so we really appreciate you spending some time with us. As Dylan goes through his 30-minute presentation, if you have any questions, use that Q&A button, and I will interrupt him. I'm good at that. But Dylan, let's go ahead and give it over to you, and I will actually have some questions because this is recruiting is near and dear to our heart because at VPM, we do the recruiting for kind of those first time level jobs, those entry level jobs for remote team members, right? We have the white glove, gold glove recruiting. And the reason why I want to Dylan on this is because people have asked us, hey, I need a vice president, I need a CEO, I need, the supreme property manager. And we feel at VPM like some positions are just a little bit higher than what we offer, that you should not look at a marketplace, but you should look at a recruiting firm. And so that's where Dylan and I connected, and I'm happy to have him here. Dylan, take it away, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, good stuff. Well, Pete, once again, thanks for having me. I know we met at the trade floor, broker owner, when you gave me some gold gloves for my 3-year-old son. He appreciates those, and it's been a good friendship ever since. So, as Pete mentioned, feel free to ask Q&A throughout this time. I'm only can see Pete, so just let you know I can't see you if you raise your hand. So be sure to ping him. And I was thinking about preparing for this time today. I really want to bring a lot of value, right? I'll reiterate some of my background in a second. I know I mentioned it when people were coming in, but really want the takeaways to be people to think of recruiting and not just hiring. Some nuggets for, yes, director roles, but also for leasing agents, property managers, et cetera. And also, disclaimer, at no point in here will I tell you you need to use a recruiter, especially not us. I hope there's a lot of nuggets for you to work independently without a recruiter and really try to build a recruiting DNA in your business, whether or not you actually use a formal recruiter or not. So, just to kick us off, our tagline here at the Kalmar Group is finding great leaders for great businesses. I love working in the property management space. It's about 60 to 70% of our business. We work with other privately held companies outside of PM, but I do think the PM industry is overlooked and unassuming, right? Everyone on this call knows that there's a lot of innovation in this space with AI and global talent, what Pete's doing, but also just really good cash flowing businesses. There's a lot of software companies in San Francisco and Austin that would be salivating if they saw some of your numbers and the quote recurring revenue that you have in your business. So property management is a very unassuming industry. It's got a lot of great leadership, a lot of great systems, a lot of great momentum right now, right? And I think most people don't understand it's a multi-billion-dollar industry with a lot of really good companies. So I start that out to say recruiting in property management, sometimes the biggest challenge is sharing with people what a great opportunity it is. So that's going to be a theme of this presentation, is just property management being proud of itself and really getting out there to share the market, to bring in some great leaders that might not have considered a career in this space. And once again, when I say leaders, I'm not just talking about director, VP level. I'm talking about other property management, leasing agents, BDMs, et cetera. So little background on me. I've been doing this for about 15 years. My first job out of school was during the global financial crisis about 15 years ago. I was competing with 40-year-olds for jobs, but I worked in admissions, did some collegiate recruiting, did some work in nonprofit, actually lived in Australia randomly. I'll tell you about it later. And then started working for an agency after that. While I was at that agency, a recruiting agency in the founder's basement, I did some work for a company called gkhouses.com. I'll touch on base on that in a little bit. They're based in Birmingham as well. Did a lot of kind of early leadership roles for them when they have 12 to 20 people. I left recruiting and spent 8 years in software sales, did a lot of selling in the B2B space with property management companies being there. And then after 8 years, decided to start my own recruitment firm, Kalmar Group, in January of 2024. So why did I mention gkhouses.com? Because in that time frame, they became Evernest, which is fairly well-known, very large property management group in the nation. Two people that I placed there were still there 9 or 10 years later. So through relationships, started doing some searches for them. They connected to Peter Lohman, who's also had a big impact on this space. And just a snowball started to grow. So I didn't, start Kalmar Group to only do recruiting and property management, full candidness, but that's the way the momentum's grown. So a lot of these insights that I'm sharing with you, yes, recruiting in general, but also specifically to the unique challenges, but also opportunities in property management. And then just a Kalmar team. I do some recruiting myself. I like to say the best recruitment job I've ever done is convincing my wife, who's a Florida girl, to live in Birmingham, Alabama, which actually does get a little cold. And I did have this like really cool, fancy professional photographer pick of my family, but I've had a third kid since then. So that's my son in a Spider-Man costume, my daughter, and then my 4-week-old daughter as well. So I'm outnumbered in the house now. So that's fairly new. So if I say something too crazy or yawn, I promise you I'm engaged and having a great time. I got my coffee here, but I'm going off about 5 hours sleep. So this should be fun. All right. So this is how
real quick, but when I do a lot of speaking and teaching for NARPM and some other conferences. And one of the things I always talk about is when you're on a property management or a general contracting firm, you're only as good as your people because we are service-based industry. So really learning and understanding and getting the right people, into the organization for service-based industries is really, really important. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out there.
Yeah, well, great segue. And I think what impresses me most about PM owners, it's just so process driven, right? EOS, L10 meeting. There's all these things that we do that are so process driven, but it seems like when it comes to hiring, we think great candidates are just going to enter the door. So you have to have a process, more top of the funnel when it comes to that. So on my left here, what most people do when they think of hiring, they don't even really think about recruiting. They post, they ping, they procrastinate, right? They post on their careers page, LinkedIn, maybe do some social media. They ping their friends, hey, you know somebody who could be a good director of ops, or they procrastinate. One of my favorite lines in recruiting and sales is hope is not a strategy. If you're hoping for that fantastic integrator just walk into your office and say, hey, do you have a job opening? It's probably not going to happen. So a common pain that comes with this is that it's cluttered, close, or constant, right? You like the alliteration here. So it's cluttered. I mean, I post on LinkedIn all the time. 95% of people don't even read the job description. Even worse on Indeed. It's too close. Sometimes someone's best friends, cousins, brother-in-law, sister might not be the best director of operations. They could be a great person, but it's a little too close and can be awkward if you don't hire them. And then it's just constant, just kind of classic small business, just kicking the can, never making that hire. You might be having an employee that you should terminate, but you're worried about leveling up the talent after they leave. Or you might have a scenario where someone does leave 6 months later, you haven't replaced them, and now you're scrambling to make up for those outputs. So my thesis in recruiting, and once again, this is directly for small business, but specifically for property management, is that recruiting is a skill. You can improve in recruiting in the same way that you've probably improved in operations or accounting or finance or sales and been forced to level up. You can improve. There are books out there. I mean, just small plug for Top Grading and Who, or Who's the book, Top Grading is the method. Great interview process there. But in regards to actual recruiting, there's a lot of like podcasts and books, et cetera, to get you better at that function. Recruiting is a sales function. If you're only thinking of recruiting as who comes in the door when I apply, you're thinking about it all wrong. And then recruiting is a core business foundation. So kind of what Pete said earlier, like on the Mount Rushmore of business, you got sales, marketing, operations, finance. I'm trying to chisel some rock for recruiting, right? To make it part of your DNA, where you, as the founder, owner, operator, or a leadership role, you're going to set the pace. you can't expect someone who's lower on the totem pole, for lack of a better term, to do recruiting if you are not doing it as well. But you can create a culture of recruiting where you have a plan to go after people, but also like a process in place to get some of those passive candidates as well. Because the reality is the people you want aren't always looking. Sometimes they are. They really need to be found. So from like our background with Kalmar Group, we do a lot with just property management in general around the nation. And I think if you're on this call and you have 200 or 20,000 doors, right, leaders are always needed. And once again, going back to the fact that there's a lot of opportunity in property management. You guys gotta really go out and find people who might not realize that. And I'll get kind of the nitty gritty to that in a second. So here's just kind of a quick snapshot of some faces and companies that we've placed. And the reason I share this is a critical point that I want to make right before we get into more granular things and kind of like really take home value that you can have. So here are 4, 8, 12, 14 folks. This is not an exhaustive list. We've actually done 3 or 4 even since this slide was made. I'm curious, rhetorical question, feel free to comment. But how many of these individuals who have all come in like director, VP, and BDM roles, how many of these people do you actually think had property management experience, specifically SFR property management experience before they got hired by one of our clients? So I'll give you 2.5 seconds. Pete, is anyone commenting? It's okay if they're not, but guess out of 14, how many had property management experience? Is there any popular number that's been posted, Pete? All right,
Let me check
somebody's got to
here.
guess.
I did not see anything in the questions and answers. Let me see if there's anything in chat. But I'll
It's okay.
guess for you. Out of the 14, I'm going to say 4.
Not a bad guess. 3.
3.
Nice job, Pete. So what does that tell us? It tells us about the market that if we're only looking for people with property management experience, I think we're missing out on a lot of talent that could be there, right? So this is what kind of the main thing. And sorry, I think we got a dog barking for somebody. If you don't mind me muting. But this is what when we're thinking about having a plan, right? I think that's the big thing because if you're not happy with the candidates that you're hiring, it's probably because you don't have a lot of candidates to choose from. Why you don't have a candidate to choose from? It's because you're not recruiting. Why you're not recruiting? Because you don't have a plan. Once again, the same process you have in other areas of business. I just want to challenge everybody on this call to think through what is it like to have a recruiting plan and a recruiting process because you're going to have more options to find the best available talent if you go farther upstream to recruit. So be focused on your vision, your voice, and your volume. All right. You can tell I love the alliteration. So vision, what does that mean? You have to sell your company. And I don't mean literally sell. Maybe you want to. And if that is part of your story, then you need to be sharing that with people. But what I mean is that you can't just be recruiting as just a PM company or just an HVAC company or just a pest control company. The people you want aren't attracted to that. They want to be a part of something bigger. So if you don't have a vision, then you need to get one for your company in regards to door count or metrics or just head count, whatever. Like what you're doing in the community and having that mission statement, like you need that because the people that you want are going to be looking for that. You also have to voice. You have to tell people. I think a lot of times in interviewing, people hold back. Maybe they don't want to be braggadocious, or maybe they are kind of vulnerable, or maybe insecure about what they're trying to build. Just for example, I got 2 clients this year that wanted a 3x in the next 3 years. That's a very scary thing to say, but the people you want that, right? They don't want to just join to maintain. Typically, they want to join to grow. And then in regards to volume, it's like that's where you got to really get out. And yes, LinkedIn, Indeed, like do those things. I'm not saying good candidates can't come through that. But if you really want to make sure that you got the best available talent in the market, you really need to get out there and find people. And once again, I'll get into the granular of that in a second. So finding a high performer is a process. They're not just going to walk in your room. And look, you've probably all made hires on this webinar of friends and of connections or job posts. I am not saying that can't be done. It actually is still a good route. But I just want people to explore recruiting and making sure they're finding the best available talent, especially as they grow. So the whole goal is to have a plan and have a process. So how can you think about this in kind of 4 like more dogmatic steps is target. Okay, this is probably one of the more important steps, and that's why it's number 1. And yes, vision of kind of sharing and defining where your company's going, but really finding who do we need for this role. and not just you deciding over lunch, but get some leadership, get their direct reports. I mean, there's been multiple times where I've talked to people about a role, and by the end of a conversation, it's actually, we don't need this role. These outputs can be taken by other people. Or we start a search and we think we need this role, and it's actually we need that role. So I think really, really clarifying what you need. And I'll give you a perfect example, like going back to the example of not needing people with property management experience. If someone has EOS experience, that's a really big part of our business. Some of the best placements I've made have been EOS integrators at a painting franchise or a pest control company where they didn't know property management. They could learn that fast, but they knew EOS. So the client, when you really build that candidate profile, the professional background that you want, it allows you to compare candidates, not just to other candidates, but to the baseline of what you want, right? So if you're looking to go buy a house, instead of just comparing of the houses on the market, well, what if you really wanted a pool and there's no pool in those houses in the market? Well, that allows you to wait to find the one you want. So I think a lot of times people just like say, hey, we need this role filled and we're just going to find the best candidate. That's a great strategy, but best candidate to who? Like you really need to define what are you looking for? What outputs do they have? What professional background do you value? Because you might have two people that fit that and you can hire. But if you don't know that avatar of what you're looking for, you're just going to keep on talking to people, talking to people, talking to people because you don't really know what you want. So the search, I've kind of covered that a little bit already, but that's where it is like intentional reach outs. And this is where it's like, hey, Dylan, I don't have time to do this. Well, there's a lot of ways you can make time, right? Like you can obviously partner with a recruiter, but also like up in your LinkedIn subscription, LinkedIn sales nav, maybe using your admin or your ops coordinator to, make a list of, LinkedIn profiles, reaching out to them. It's a bit manual, but it still can be important. Yes, do like the LinkedIn posting, the Indeed posting. I'm not saying to not do that, but having a list of 100 folks in LinkedIn that you think you could have a good conversation with and slowly chipping away at that list, once again, you'd be surprised about how many people want to have that conversation. When it comes to evaluation, I know I've talked a lot about recruiting, but hiring is important too. Having a firm process for interviewing is key. I recommend, who, top grading, whatever you want to call it, in regards to that process. I think it's the most efficient one. I like to suggest people to do like an initial video call, 15 to 20 minutes, get to know them, then in person, and then another in person. And one of those in persons being in depth, like 90 minutes to 2 hour interview. I know we're focused more on recruiting here, but from the hiring standpoint, interviewing, I highly suggest that. And then the close, right? I suggest talking about compensation as early as possible. That's a critical part of our process. We talk about timeline, location, and compensation on the first call. So if you're not vetting people for compensation on like literally the first phone call, I actually suggest doing that. I mean, not on the job description. People go back and forth in job description. Typically, if you have a good title and a good market, like people are going to have a reasonable idea of what you're going to pay. And once again, I'm not talking about international roles or remote roles. I'm talking mainly about in-person roles right now. I would try to vet on compensation as soon as possible and not go through all these steps and be 30K off. So, but that close is important because you're going to have to sell the vision and what's in it for them. I'll get to that in a second. But it's important that the close goes better when you have more options, and the more options enjoy the experience when you have a good process of interviewing, because all these four things are a reflection of your business, right? So once again, in the same way that you have investors and you want to have a very smooth process from the time they fill out the online form to talking to your BDM to signing the paperwork, this whole experience is what you need to really shore up to really find the high performers. And this goes for directors, yes, but also for leasing agents, property managers, etc. I'll close the slide with this. The recruiting experience is their first taste of you and your business. And then when it goes smooth and you move with clarity and urgency and story and vision, it's going to show up and it's going to separate you from the other options they have. The main option being staying where they're at, right? I'm not sure if we have any college football fans, but I mentioned my wife's from Florida. Well, the Florida Gators are probably going to sign Lane Kiffin. Do you think they just waited for Lane Kiffin to say, hey guys, I'd like to do the job? No, they flew the governor, Steve Spurrier. Like they are showing schools to his son right now. So this might be angering any Ole Miss fans might have in the call. But what I'm getting at is like to really recruit people, you need to sell them. You need to recruit them. And the whole experience is a reflection of your business and how they're going to enjoy that role, whether you know it or not. So once again, I'm not saying that has to be perfect tomorrow. classic Southern phrase, eat the meat and spit out the bones here. I'm not saying you have to do all these things. I just want to encourage everyone to do 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degrees better and come at recruiting and hiring with a little more intentionality because you might not realize just how much it matters. All right, I'll pause my soapbox there. Any questions from the group or anything from that?
No questions so far, Dylan.
Cool. Moving at a good pace here. All right. These are a lot of the tools that we use. I'm not saying you have to use all these tools, but I'm just saying having a tech stack in the same way you have a tech stack for other areas of your business is incredibly important, right? Like even Calendly to like book calls. That's a great step where you're not going back and forth with candidates. Having like Notion to kind of like have a pipeline of candidates. You can be like, hey, I talked to them, I DQ'd them. Okay, hey, what's the updates on them? I got some clients that use Google Drive a lot, saying, hey, look at these notes before the call in order for that second and third interview with other decision makers. Once again, it's having a process, it's having something in place. So what wins right now, I would say, is transparency, trust, and the purple cow mentality. I'll get to that in a second. So these are a couple of just kind of snapshot of things that we do, but also encourage our clients to do, whether they use us or not. That job description is key. Titles matter. Anyone who says titles don't matter has a title that warrants such an opinion, right? Titles matter a lot. And the difference between director of ops and senior director of ops or sales manager or BDM, like these all matter a lot. So you need to be very intentional. Talk to your peers. Call me. I'll give you some tips on the best title to use for certain searches. We try to do a lot of advertisements. So that Canva graphic on the right is something we did for SJA. We've done 3 placements for them in the last 45 days, all kind of PM lead, remote, but also director of ops role. And then one thing that we do that I encourage everyone to do is we literally do an interview with all our clients. And it's like a 3-minute kind of podcast style. It's kind of corny, but we love blasting these out. I've got a lot of good feedback because people want to see you before they talk to you, right? Because once again, the people we're talking about are kind of happy where they're at. In order to kind of pull them out of their opportunity, especially maybe an industry they're not really aware of, especially for a company they've never maybe heard of, like it takes a lot. So we want to be as transparent as possible and say, hey, this is a great company. It's a great business. They're moving in a great trajectory. They're looking for a great leader. Could that be you? And what I mean by the purple cow, this is kind of a classic kind of Seth Godin term from like 10, 15 years ago. It's just do something different. Do something different. And even when you're out and about town, if you meet like a really, really sharp individual, give them your business card, ask them to coffee, tell them to jump on a call. ABC always be closing. Well, ABC always be recruiting, right? So if you really want to build a 5-star team, you need to have your antenna up at all times, and not just when you have to, but having a bench in place for when you need to. And then I'll kind of close with this. These are just some kind of basic metrics that we try to do. I'm not saying you have to do these because you be doing it independently, but we try to reach out to about 75 to 125 people who match what our client has said the candidate profile needs to be in regards to professional background, location, etc. We probably talk to 25 to 30 folks. Typically, it's actually 40 in regards like a vetting call, etc. Have about 3 to 6 formal interviews and only do one. And I would say for anybody starting recruiting is clarity, availability, humility, and trust, right? Clarity is always being clear with next steps with a candidate. If they're not moving forward, tell them as soon as possible. If you're excited about them, tell them as soon as possible, right? There is kind of a dating, kind of a dance that goes on in the interview process, but the more clarity, the better. Availability, if a high performer needs to meet Friday at 4, but you typically try to take Fridays at 3 off, meet with the candidate, right? If they can only meet Saturday at 9:30 a.m. over donuts and coffee, meet them. Like high performers, it's worth it in order to show some humility and availability. And with humility, I think the big thing here is just they don't know you. They don't know property management. They don't know your company. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But just like having the humility to say, hey, look, we want you. We think it's a great opportunity. I think sometimes the worst thing, I can tell you right now, a worst thing a company can say is they should want to work here. They should take 10K less. We have a great culture. We have a great company. Look at when I started this company, I didn't get paid for 2 years. I'm telling you, that's pride. that's not the strategy to find high performers, especially in certain stages of growth. And the worst thing you could say is they should want to work here. Well, they don't know you. Like 5K is a lot to them. 10K is a lot to them. So I'm just encouraged from a compensation standpoint, it shows humility. When in doubt, be generous, because losing a candidate over 5K, you're going to lose a lot of sleep over that, and a lot less sleep than you'd lose if in paying them that. And then lastly, just trust. It's like trust but verify, right? Typically, people mean well. People aren't going to be typically not like lying to you in interviews and things like that. But there's a trust component in regards to yeah, taking a bet on somebody, but they're also trusting you. And I think that's where the transparency comes in. So I'll kind of close with this. I know we're approaching time, Pete. Not going to open up for questions, but I've been on a few podcasts. Good looking guy in the coat there is Pete. You can check out our Narcom pod was with Tony Klein, a friend of mine, and then obviously the Evernest guys. Their office is 5 blocks from me and across the street from my favorite lunch spot, so I see them often. I'm also the host of Unfiltered. It's a propertymanagement.com podcast. I did recruiting for Matt Spear, who owns a PM group out of Indy, and then he bought propertymanagement.com about 6 months ago. That's a whole different business, but we talk a lot about recruiting and hiring there, and that's just been a really fun business to be a part of, also in building out their sales team now. So I covered a lot today. I talk fast. I speak Alabama. So if you have any questions, I am more than happy to jump on a call with you to talk about titles, job descriptions, comps. We do a lot. We've done work in major metros, kind of more rural towns, and there are different challenges in each of those markets. But we've done everything from remote PM leads to directors to VPs to COOs to BDM. So all across the gamut. But it's an exciting time to be in property management. I'm honored to be a part of it and be a small partner in this space with some great clients, and sincerely want to help this industry and keep pushing it forward.
Dylan, when do you start to bring about the core values during the recruiting? Is that in the
First call?
is that
First call.
is it in the posting as well, or is that the call?
I would say 100% in the posting. The more, and once again, most people don't think people just don't have a perception of like small, like people think core values sometimes just is like Fortune 500 companies. It's like, no, our core values mean a ton to us. You need to be in line with that from day one. I would say in the job description, in the first email, in the first conversation, as much as possible, talk about your core values.
I learned that a job posting is different than a job description. The job description is kind of like bullet pointy, not really super. It's not really an advertisement, where the posting is an advertisement. Do you subscribe to that and talk? And if you do, talk a little bit about how the difference is between the posting and the description.
I completely agree with that. I think they can be two different things in a sense, where the job posting is a lot briefer. You don't need to have like OKRs and KPIs, and even like from a competitive nature, you don't want to be sharing your revenue and EBITDA, things like that. The job description can come deeper in the interview process, but I'd actually triple down on that and say, hey, even from a mentality, you need to be thinking at first, the first like 70% of the process is recruiting. And like I'm getting out there trying to share how it's going to be a good opportunity for them. Yes, something has to switch eventually of like, okay, let's really get in the weeds here. Are you going to be a good candidate for me? But I think a lot of times people flip that switch too early. They start interviewing people, and people are like, whoa, I don't even know if I want to work for you. I'm not going to fill out this predictive index. Like, I just talked to you. I don't even know what the comp is. So I encourage people to lean heavier on recruiting at first and then put their interview hat on. You got to put the hat on eventually, because you got to make sure they're going to be a good fit. But you don't want to put that too early, because once again, we're talking to high performers who are probably happy where they're at. And if you start pumping them with evaluations and telling them they have a 2-hour interview by Friday, they're going to be like, whoa, like slow down. So I would encourage people to really recruit hard, make sure people are interested, and then kind of put your interview hat on.
Do you think there's a different process for recruiting high-end jobs like directors versus entry-level jobs? Meaning, should you have a different hiring system for one versus the other?
Yes, I think the director VP searches kind of take longer, but I do think you need to have a very high intentionality for those. I mean, look, I mean, you do the leasing agents and property manager; those are your future leaders. Those are people that you could develop and retain, where you don't have to recruit a director of ops, because you kind of move people through the ranks. So yes, they're different, right? They're different compensations, or different maybe immediate needs. But in a lot of ways, those people, everybody has to match your core values. There's no exception for someone who's getting paid 110 and someone getting paid 60.
How does a recruiter typically get paid? Do they get a portion of the rate? Do they get a straight up fee? Like what is it? What does it typically look like when you hire a recruiter?
Yeah, I would say industry rate for recruiters typically 25% of first year comp. Um, you know, Kalmar Group, we try to spread out those payments a lot. And then if we're doing like bulk hires, we obviously lower that rate. But we look at it as not just finding you one person, but also hopefully revamping the entire kind of recruiting process and hiring, et cetera. So yeah, that's probably the best way to answer it is 20 to 25% of that first year comp.
Keith asked if the recording of this webinar will be available. Yes, Keith, it will. VPM will be sending it out to all the attendees. So thank you.
Keith, call me anytime.
Okay, we got a question here from Oscar. If you start up PM company and you want to incentivize leasing agents and maintenance dispatchers, if you are a startup PM company and you want to incentivize leasing agents and maintenance dispatchers, I think he's asking, do you want to add an incentivization? So when you're recruiting, do you recommend your clients to create some incentivization or some bonus plans if they hit certain thresholds, or do you like just saying, hey, just pay them a straight, salary?
I love incentives. I think you have to follow the incentives. I don't know if that's a Buffett or Charlie Munger quote, and I come from a sales background. I think everybody should have some portion of their compensation to be somehow incentive driven. That should not be reserved just for director, VP, or BDMs. I'll tell you one thing too, just
I
from
100% agree, by the way.
and
100.
I'm not the expert on like those specific roles and how to incentivize them on OKRs, but people just want clarity. The stage of career that most people are at when they're joining your PM group, assuming they're not recent grads, they've had hopefully at least one good experience and probably at least one bad experience when it comes to incentives and company culture and things like that. And we're dealing with adults. Like that's another thing. Like just treat people like adults, and you can go a long way in life. So I think with that, yes, having that clear plan, it's also a reflection of your culture that you want everybody to win. And I'll tell you one thing that's very unique to property management companies that I've seen a couple clients do that I think is really cool is these kind of like bonus incentives, even some kind of silly. I got one client that loves giving Costco memberships. That seems silly, but that's kind of fun and kind of like a reflection of the culture. It's like a personal Costco membership to everybody on the team. But also, I got another company that lets people get first look at deals, right? So if you're a director of ops and you're making, let's say, 120 to 130, they give you an opportunity to they teach you how to buy cash flow investment properties, but also give you the first look at deals. If they have an investor kind of turn away, they let their team look at it first to see if they want to buy the house. Okay. That might
Very
happen once a year, but that's really cool. Once again,
cool.
even if they don't take you up on it, it's still a reflection of your culture that you care about your people.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dylan. Every person in my company has key performance indicators, and if they exceed those KPIs, they typically get tied to a bonus. We also try to bonus on activities. So, Oscar, for your question on maintenance dispatchers, I can tell you what I did at Empire, my property management firm. We had three KPIs. If the team hit all three KPIs, then they got a bonus. Because they were remote, the bonus was like $100 a month. And so this doesn't seem like a lot to the PM company, but it really was a lot to each individual that received that $100 bonus because they were remote. So
Hey,
hopefully that
hey,
answers the
Pete.
question.
Yeah, and Pete, hey, one quick thing. I like a mirror moment. One thing that you can just anybody on this webinar. I once again I have no clue who's on this webinar or what, like how big your PM group is, whatever. But if you're on EOS or if you're not on EOS, is recruiting a KPI or OKR that you have right now? Like in your LTME, are you talking about recruiting even once a month? And I think that's like if someone could walk away with one thing, it's like, is recruiting a core part of your business? Because you can say on one side of your mouth that you value people over everything, but if you don't have a process to find the best available people out there in your local market, what are you doing? So I think that's my biggest challenge is like putting a KPI and OKR with your leadership team specifically, and maybe that's just you on what am I doing right now to keep that top of funnel full or at least actively thinking about how to find great people to really level up my business.
Yeah, and I always find it interesting that property management firms and general contracts, because we have some general contractors on here, they have a process for everything except for hiring. So one of the holes that VPM fills is if you are hiring, entry level jobs or mid level jobs using remote team, you can utilize our resources, and we have a hiring system that we kind of utilize for you, right? As a company, so our white glove, our gold glove service, we just basically implement our hiring system, and then this way you get to leverage our hiring system. If you don't have a hiring system, you can leverage Dylan and his team for their hiring system and their recruiting. Because not only does Dylan do the recruiting, but the recruiting comes with hiring, right? So
Yeah,
recruiting is one aspect of it, hiring is the other aspect, and then I'm sure Dylan can help you determine what the rate should be, right? How much you're going to pay people, the benefits could be, and how to even manage folks. So
Pete, I love the wolf in the background. Pete, move your head one more time. You got the Kalmar wolf back there. I love it.
I got that. I got who not how back there, and
Oh, love it.
I'm going to give everybody one more book. So Top Grading is a really big, fat, long book, which is incredible. It's great. Who Not How is another great book. And the book that I've been studying over the last 2 years is Hiring for Attitude by Mark Murphy. So I'm a
Mm.
big fan of that. So Dylan, add that to your deal. So if you do want to schedule time with Dylan, you can go ahead and just scan here, or Dylan, if you want to just give your information, that would be great. You can throw it
Yeah,
out again.
yeah, I can always no, I appreciate everybody joining us. I know we went a little bit over. I love talking about this. Once again, if you just want to talk about job descriptions, comp title for your market, I am more than happy to jump on a quick call. But you can find us at thekalmargroup.com, KALMAR group.com. If you scroll at the bottom, there's a spot to just book a call directly on my calendar. And yeah, we love the PM space. It's been good to us, and we feel really blessed to be a part of it. So, once again, we'd love to jump on a call and help out in any way, whether or not you formally partner with us or not.
And I guess I did not share the right screen. So thank
No,
you
yeah,
for
actually,
reaching
real
out.
quick, and we
If
actually
you want
have
to
a
schedule a
sorry,
meeting with Dylan, there you go. Now you
oops, that's not it. Yeah, it's the kalmargroup.com/PM. I should have been a little more clear there.
And then, so Dylan, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And we are going to have our final webinar for the year on Tuesday, December 16th. We're going to have Deb Newell, who's got more uh, initials after her name now that she's a PhD and all these other things. But Deb is kind of the OG consultant in the property management space. But we're going to be talking about how to basically set up goals for 2026 and beyond. So would love to see you guys at the next one on December 16th. Dylan, thanks so much for being here. And everybody, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you all later.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. See you, bud.